Today I want to discuss the term network effect because many of you out there likely have heard of it, but don't really know what it means. Basically, the theory is that the greater the number of users that come to a network, the more valuable the network becomes. Take, for example, Alexander Graham Bell. Let's say you're him. You've just invented the telephone. A big congratulations to you. Unfortunately, your invention is worthless. Why? Because you have nobody to call. Good news though, the moment that you add a second line onto the network, suddenly you have utility. You have a use case for this phone. But that still doesn't necessarily attract me who wants to save my money. But then suddenly my buddy Larry, who is in our mutual friend group, even though I don't know you, Alexander Graham Bell, gets a telephone. Now suddenly I have a reason to purchase one, and henceforth it multiplies. Thus, the greater number of users that you have on a network, the more it attracts new users to it. Again, the more valuable it becomes. Or take, for example, Facebook. If there were 50 users of the service in the entire nation, how valuable would that network be? But the more people pile on, suddenly you become incentivized to create your own profile to keep up with your friends, to share your own things. Again, the greater number of users, the greater the magnetic pool becomes that attracts more and more people to it. Hence, Facebook being a $1 trillion company. To exemplify the magnetic pool, how many of you guys have personally or known friends who have threatened to quit Facebook or Twitter, and they do so for a temporary period of time and move over to smaller networks like Getter or Gab.com? They invariably almost always come back because what they're craving is the engagement that the mass number of users on these platforms offer you. Quitting Facebook, Twitter, something with a network effect, is akin to trying to quit cigarettes. You keep coming back for the high. So how do you create a network effect? Well, you have to have a first mover advantage. You have to be one of the first to a new industry. Take, for example, Uber. They incentivize and subsidize massive adoption of its network by offering bonuses, by offering great customer service. This was done in hopes of cementing the network effect. Or Airbnb, they did the same thing, and today they have the greatest number of potential hosts and potential renters, thus everybody goes to the platform. It is like a black hole that keeps you within it and attracts greater number of users to it. The same can be said for Google and Bitcoin. Well, does that leave you scratching your head? The fact is that Google, to explain it, generates such great amount of data because they offer the best search results, thus giving them the data to outpace the results that Bing, Yahoo, Brave could possibly offer you. They are leveraging their customers, their data that they are freely giving them to offer a superior product, thus keeping everybody there and attracting more users. You see how it goes. It's repetitive, I know, but I'm trying to explain what a network effect is. So how does it work for Bitcoin? Well, first of all, they had a first mover advantage. It is a completely decentralized network that offers an incorruptible store of value that cannot be inflated away because it has a fixed and limited supply. The more people that are using this network, the greater number of users it's going to attract because it attracts new businesses to it that are willing to accept it as a payment method because more and more people are holding Bitcoin. Similarly, Bitcoin has an advantage in terms of the remittances that they can bypass the Western Union fees that used to gobble up 30-40% in some cases of the amount that's being transferred back home for merely pennies. Thus, you're going to see a sped up adoption of this network because of the superior technology and the friction that it dissolves formerly. So can the network effect ever be broken? Yes, it can. Like, take a look, for example, at Kodak, which had the golden goose, film processing of the physical form. And believe it or not, they were the inventors of the first digital camera. They ignored this to try to milk as much as they could out of their physical processing of photography and quickly got eaten away by the superior, cheaper technology of digital photography. And the company is no more. Facebook also was not the first in the social media game. They took out MySpace, which by no means had a dominant network, but they still had first mover advantage. They still had a lot of advantage. How did they do it? Because they were superior on a technological basis. Or Blockbuster, which had a massive number of stores out there that were the behemoth in the video renting industry. They completely ignored video streaming. They could have bought Netflix for $50 million. Instead, they concentrated on putting candy on their store shelves. They had a great year that year profit-wise because they were able to sell so much candy. And the next year, they were basically put out of business because they ignored the erosion that video streaming offered the end user. In all these cases, a new technology came around that devoured those that had the golden goose, that had the network effect preceding them. It can also be done by government. Take, for example, online poker. Everybody used to play at a site called partypoker.com. Why did they play there? Because everybody else played there. It was a magnet. It just attracted the users because that's where the action was. Then the US government decided that no poker company, no online gaming company would be allowed to take money from US customers, thus forcing them to jettison all their US users and opening the door for competitors that were not publicly traded as Party Poker was, thus beholden completely to the law. There were other people that got into the market the same way when you illegalize drugs, you drive the good actors out of business and open the door for the Sinaloa cartel. Side note. Or it can be completely self-inflicted. Take, for example, the big Silicon Valley tech firms, which seem to value ideology much more than they do profits. This is true of Twitter, where they are actively kicking out people for saying such horrific things that don't completely comply with a very narrow band of ideology. So you say men are not women and you can be booted, suspended. Or YouTube, completely self-inflicted, they gave me a strike for a video that I produced more than a year ago. The strike came last week. And I feel that the platform is now quicksand because they are utterly censorious. Their rules are not clear. Their communication sucks. And frankly, they are pushing me to recommend to you rumble.com. The link is in the description for my videos. Please join me there because I feel safer building something on a free speech platform than I do YouTube. Thus, the stranglehold that YouTube has is actively being thwarted by its own management. So what, for example, would destroy Bitcoin? Again, government action potentially could. China made it illegal to mine within its borders, to mine Bitcoin. And what happened was, instead of Bitcoin falling out of the sky, there was a decline in the price, while the hash rate, which is essentially the power that is backing the Bitcoin network, and the miners just took all their rigs and set up outside in different jurisdictions. And the Bitcoin network is now producing more hash, greater power than ever before, thus proving its resiliency. But nevertheless, the Chinese government is actively thwarting Bitcoin. In fairness to former Vice President Brandon's administration, they've actually been pretty good on Bitcoin, trying to set rules and regulations and recognizing it as a commodity, as a property. Similarly, the greater number of users that hold Bitcoin, the greater pushback there will be to try to destroy it politically, at least within the United States in non-authoritarian governments like, for example, China. So to sum it up, network effects are incredibly valuable and a key reason to invest in a company because the stream of revenues seem more secure. Thus, many people willing to pay a higher price for the stock to own a piece of that company for that stream of revenues. However, network effects, what might seem like an impregnable business model, like Blockbuster, like Kodak, even like gold and Western Union, when you take into account Bitcoin and the remittance fees that are being saved by people sending money back home to El Salvador that used to go to Western Union, you're going to see that network effect eat away at Western Union's profits rapidly. So you have the network effect that definitely can exist, but it can be broken by government, by new technology. And I think that it's very important for us to have a greater understanding of the network effect, which is why I made this video. Please share this video with anybody that you think might benefit from it. Thumb it up, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you do. Peace.